sun was setting over the rugged plains of Texas, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson as the train whistled its arrival at the small, dusty station. Two brothers, Clayton and younger sibling Eli, stood waiting on the wooden platform with entirely different expressions etched onto their weathered faces that evening. Clayton had ordered a mail-order bride from back east months ago after corresponding through heartfelt letters that promised a new beginning and a loving home. Eli, a humble cowboy who found joy in the simplicity of ranch life, had come along to welcome his future sister-in-law with quiet, hopeful curiosity. As the train doors opened and a gentle young woman named Abigail stepped down clutching a worn carpet bag, Clayton's eyes narrowed with immediate, unmistakable disappointment and disdain. But the moment Clayton coldly turned his back and declared she wasn't what he'd been promised, a chain of events began that would forge an unexpected bond deeper than any blood tie. Abigail stood frozen in the swirling dust, her heart plummeting as Clayton's harsh words echoed across the platform and curious onlookers began to whisper among themselves. Eli watched his brother's callous rejection with a knot tightening in his stomach, feeling a sudden wave of protectiveness for the woman who had traveled so far only to be humiliated. Without a second thought, Eli stepped forward, tipped his worn Stetson respectfully, and offered Abigail a warm, steady smile that contrasted sharply with the chill his brother had just delivered. He introduced himself as Clayton's brother and, in a voice as calm as a prairie sunrise, asked if she would allow him to escort her somewhere safe for the night. Abigail, fighting back tears that shimmered like morning dew on her lashes, nodded gratefully and placed her trembling hand on the crook of Eli's outstretched arm. The two rode in Eli's simple buckboard wagon along a winding trail bordered by sagebrush, and the silence between them soon melted into easy conversation under the emerging stars. Eli learned that Abigail had been a schoolteacher in Pennsylvania who had dreamed of wide-open skies and a partner who would cherish her heart rather than criticize her appearance. By the time they reached Eli's modest but well-kept cabin nestled against a grove of cottonwoods, Abigail felt the first stirrings of genuine safety and an unfamiliar lightness in her chest. Eli insisted she take his bed while he slept in the barn, and he prepared a simple supper of beans, biscuits, and coffee that tasted better than any feast she had ever known. Over the next few days, Abigail discovered that Eli possessed a rare combination of rugged strength and gentle humor, and he never once made her feel like an unwanted burden. She began helping with small chores around the homestead, mending fences and gathering eggs, while Eli taught her how to read cattle brands and predict the weather by the wind scent. Every evening they would sit on the porch swing Eli had built himself, watching the horizon melt into layers of purple and gold, sharing stories about their childhoods and secret hopes. Abigail's initial shame slowly transformed into a quiet blooming of self-worth, as Eli's unwavering kindness showed her that she was more than a discarded mail-order bride. One afternoon, while fixing a loose shutter together during a sudden thunderstorm, their hands touched and an electric spark passed between them that neither could deny or ignore any longer. Eli looked into Abigail's luminous eyes, rain dripping from the brim of his hat, and realized he had fallen deeply and irrevocably in love with his brother's intended bride. He confessed his feelings with trembling honesty, assuring her that he wanted no obligation or gratitude, only the chance to cherish her for the rest of his days. Abigail, her heart pounding like wild Mustang hooves, admitted she had never met a man as decent and true as Eli, and she wanted nothing more than to build a life beside him. They decided to visit the town preacher the very next morning, a decision that filled both of them with a sense of destiny as bright and certain as a Texas sunrise. When Clayton heard the news from a gossipy neighbor over a game of cards in the saloon, his face first twisted with anger and then settled into a brooding, regretful silence. He rode out to Eli's cabin, expecting to find his brother gloating, but instead he witnessed Abigail laughing as she fed a newborn calf with a bottle, her joy undeniable and radiant. Eli confronted Clayton on the porch, his voice steady but edged with steel, telling his older brother that some treasures are only recognized when you've already thrown them away. Clayton, for the first time in his prideful life, had no clever retort, and he simply turned his horse around and disappeared into the shadowed horizon without another word. The wedding took place beneath a sprawling oak tree, with wildflowers woven through Abigail's hair, and the entire small community witnessing a union born from unexpected grace. Eli's heart swelled with a gratitude so immense that he felt tears prick his eyes as he slid a simple silver band onto Abigail's finger and promised his eternal devotion. Abigail knew in her soul that every hardship she had endured, every lonely night she had wept into her pillow, had led her directly to this moment of profound belonging. The couple worked side by side to expand the ranch, planting an orchard whose blossoms every spring reminded them that love often grows in the most improbable, rocky soil. Eli never once mentioned Clayton's rejection again, choosing instead to fill their home with laughter, music from his old fiddle, and a peace that money could never purchase. Abigail became known throughout the county for her healing poultices and her gift for delivering calves, earning the deep respect of all the hardened ranchers who once pitied her. Whenever a young woman arrived on the stagecoach looking lost or uncertain, Abigail would invite her for tea and share her own story of how rejection had become her greatest blessing. Eli, watching his wife's kindness ripple outward like circles on a still pond, marveled at how a single act of compassion could transform an entire community's heart. Years passed, and the ranch thrived with the laughter of children who inherited their father's steady courage and their mother's gentle, unbreakable spirit of hope. Clayton eventually sold his portion of the land and drifted westward, a lonely figure chasing something he could never name because he had never learned how to truly see people. On frosty winter evenings, when the wind howled outside, Eli would pull Abigail close by the crackling hearth and whisper that she was the finest miracle the frontier ever gave him. Abigail would rest her head on his shoulder, remembering that terrible day at the station, and marvel at how a closed door had led to a wide-open vista of love. The story of the cowboy who took his brother's rejected mail-order bride home spread across the territory like wildfire, becoming a legend that warmed even the most cynical hearts. Travelers passing through would often ask to see the famous couple, and Eli would graciously tip his hat while Abigail offered fresh buttermilk biscuits and a kind word. One day, a young journalist from a St. Louis newspaper arrived to interview them, and Abigail told the truth plainly, that love isn't about first impressions, but about daily, faithful choices. Eli added that real treasure is often hidden in what others overlook, and the entire saloon fell silent as the reporter scribbled those words onto a crumpled notepad. The article was printed with the headline, "The Bride Who Found a Better Groom," and it inspired countless lonely souls to keep hoping, even when circumstances seemed impossibly cruel. Back at the cabin, Eli carved a wooden sign that read Providence Ranch, because he believed with all his might that divine mercy had guided Abigail directly into his care. Abigail often teased that she had crossed 1,000 miles just to find a man who couldn't cook a decent stew, but she said it with eyes so full of love that Eli's heart nearly burst. Their children grew up hearing the tale not as a scandal, but as a sacred reminder that character matters infinitely more than charm, reputation, or fleeting physical judgments. Every Sunday after church, the family would walk hand in hand along the very road where Eli had first brought Abigail home in the twilight, a pilgrimage of gratitude and remembrance. The old-timers at the general store would shake their heads in wonder, admitting that they had misjudged Eli as just a dusty cowboy when he was actually the wisest man among them. As the decades rolled on, the couple's hair turned silver and their faces lined with the beautiful map of a life fully lived, yet their eyes still sparkled with that initial frontier magic. Before this tale rides off into the sunset, make sure to press that like button and subscribe with notifications on so you never miss another timeless Western story from our homestead. Share your thoughts in the comments below about whether you believe Eli's brave, compassionate choice was written in the stars or simply the mark of a genuinely good man. We read every single comment with deep appreciation because your insights and support fuel our passion for bringing heartfelt frontier tales to life each and every week. Remember that in a world full of hasty judgments, a little kindness can change everything. And sometimes the greatest love stories begin when someone dares to see the worth that others discard.